Now the moment we've all been waiting for.
I am Nate Riggle, and you are listening to The Way of the Bonfire. All right, we're back, baby. Look at us. This guy still keeps coming. He may not be consistent, but he is persistent. You feel me? It's been crazy and exciting and eventful and transformative couple of years. It's been a few months since I did an episode. So quick update is just doing insurance brokerage now, life insurance. And I've really enjoyed getting to learn this whole new arena. By the way, if anybody ever tells you that this is what you do and this is the only thing you can do and just stay in your niche and work that out and become the best at that one thing, and that's all, once you're locked in, you're not going to be labeled or able to be anything other than that. Just let me be the one to tell you, it is painful to keep changing gears and to change and try different things, but the experience and the people you meet and the things you learn about yourself in switching and defying kind of the normal trajectory of things, the go to college, start your career, work your way up, build your retirement in that one thing. I ain't hating on it, but I refuse to to let anyone think that that's the only way to be. Across all of these different experiences that I've had, and even right now, just having these conversations as I do life insurance reviews and meet with families and people of all ages and socioeconomic status, from super poor and barely getting by to rich, and to people that are ill and healthy and different stages of life. There seems to be a few things, but just going to focus on one that I think we tend to get wrong most often as humans, especially as adults. And that's the way we value one. Believing that one to many is the only way. And to most men and women that are ambitious and trying to progress and achieve what they're supposed to, or what they feel like they're supposed to, everything seems to need to be about volume. That's the story that we hear about, counting and comparing and analyzing and controlling to get leverage and visibility and success and create a reputation and a legacy, or ultimately, like, the dream would be a dynasty or an empire for your namesake. And corporations often say they have a value mission, right? So it's not all just pride and ego. But you know what they teach in the finance world? I was a business major and a finance minor in college. I got a degree in that, and I've been working with people in all different levels of that you can imagine, across every single different industry, from the front line all the way up to the tippy top with the billionaires. You know what they teach in finance is that the purpose of finance and business is to maximize shareholder value. The issue, and why that's such a big problem, is that the incentives of shareholders are not necessarily aligned with this benevolent mission statement of the company. And finance is the fuel. That's the fuel that keeps anything going. And so it tends to all kind of come back to that. And I promise there's a there's a hopeful message in here, and an exciting lesson that I've learned and observed that I'm going to share with you here in a minute. But what tends to happen, and I even worked for a company that was all about data and experiences and managing, the story behind the data, and having sound research, and, the right amount of participants in a study to come to a conclusion. And I guess that's part of the problem, is that it seems like numbers and data and volume is what's valued most above anything in almost any modern kind of story, right? What is ignored is that there's such a thing as a critical mass, right? That there's a point where the volume is going to not keep behaving the way it has been behaving, I guess. Like, so if you plant so many seeds in one garden, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have a bigger crop. If you keep doubling and tripling how many seeds you put into something, that doesn't mean it's going to grow faster, or even that it might actually get worse. But that's almost never what we focus on when we talk about numbers and data and the mathematical formula for success. It's usually about more input, more speed, more volume equals more choices, or more copies of things, and more copies equals more scale, equals more jobs, more production, more greater good for humanity. But that's incorrect. There's a point where more is, like I said before, a worthy pursuit. I'm not knocking on building things, right? On adding and seeking abundance. But we don't seem to care as much about where that more line is, where that ends. And in this podcast, I talk a lot about curiosity and what a powerful thing it is. But I always want to focus and do this more and more as I talk about, that core tenet of curiosity, perspective, connection, and joyful fulfillment. That curiosity piece, I really want to focus on that. Curiosity, unbridled, did kill a cat. I've said before that it did because the cat was poking its nose in places it shouldn't be. The problem is that it's unbridled, right? Unbridled curiosity and hunger for what is possible to be achieved and collected or accumulated or put in your your hoard, your dragon's hoard, right? Your stash before you clock out. That seems to be the loudest message being served up. If you're just kind of logging onto social media or going online or, letting the stories come to you in a sense, that's kind of the prevailing narrative. That's what you're going to hear loudest if you don't know where to look. And we tend to be kind of numb to the consequences of that until it becomes much more painful to escape them. And we rationalize that winning alone is a virtue. But ambition, listen closely here, ambition without humility and appreciation is just greed in a costume. And I think I've been guilty of it. I think most people, this isn't an us versus them situation. I'm pro humanity, pro children of God, even if they've made stupid decisions and built stupid things and they're using them wrong or they're just confused or lost or misguided. I've got compassion for all that. And because, there's good, and we all have the capacity for virtue, and malice and mistakes are part of life, right? It's part of being human. But clarity is important, right? Understanding whether this is ambition by itself and greed dressed up in a costume that's been rationalized for the greater good, or if it contains humility and appreciation and intention and a better understanding of this sort of thing. And since that tends to be the prevailing thing, that seems to be where we are, for many in today's world, this has led to a sense of nihilism, a feeling of, what's the point? People are stupid. A feeling of like we're just, humans are doomed to suffer and not live up to potential, or a feeling of learned hopelessness of, the haves versus the have-nots, or of apathy, because it seems like that stuff I was talking about earlier, this need for always, getting to that next level and being the best and building things up, and just multiplying the inputs so that you can have more output. That's burning people out. And it feels like seems to be the only option, like that, and that's all that's driving most people, is this sort of selfish, ambitious, but necessary way of living and being and seeing the world. And it's like this chasing our tail, trying to get to this point where we don't have to do that anymore. But once you kind of sink that way of being in, what you repeatedly do is, and what you repeatedly choose becomes who you are. And it's hard to change that. So it's kind of a sad thing to view if you don't look a little closer. So the good news is that if you pay attention, if you listen carefully, there are wildly successful people and less fortunate, but still incredibly fulfilled people playing a totally different game. And they are living by a totally different principle. And I've been really paying attention to this. Throughout my life, it's been something that's kind of stood out to me. You know, you meet somebody and you're like, what is it about them that seems easier? I don't think it's just who they are. I think it's also a principle that they live by. And I've learned that more recently. And people across time have always figured this out. It hasn't just been the most popular or widely accepted in most societies and civilizations across time. That's why it's not obvious, or it's not the first thing that jumps out at you, just like it isn't today. If you log into any media source, that's not what you're seeing. You're seeing the win or lose mentality, right? But what's different about these people that have figured this one principle out is that they're not out to win. They're not out to just survive or preserve themselves or stay in a state of safety and comfort. They're out to win well. Or if they can't do that, if that doesn't happen, they're out to lose well with honor intact, knowing come what may, they will still be able to continue the journey well and eventually win well. So what's the concept? That's not even the concept that I think is at the essence of it. It's one of the oldest original and moral intuitions in recorded history. It can be found not just in the people that you run into every day, it's just different being around them, but it can be found in the samurai code. It's found in every major religious text. It's found in philosophical books and nonfiction. It's found in historical accounts of the Egyptians and Sumerians. So it goes as back far as we have any kind of record. It's even found among the Stoics, which might surprise some people who think that they were all just, hardcore individualists and that sort of thing. It's even found in ancient and modern observations of nature and the way things like bee colonies work. And in some cases, it's also found in some of the older codes of commerce and merchant records and tax law, of all things. It's illustrated in ancient Greek theater and even the founders of mathematical theory. So the foundations of math are built upon this truer principle, math and science. It's a core tenet of Christianity, Judaism, the Islamic faith, Buddhism, but it's quiet. And please hear me now. Those things of true, universal, timeless worth require you to look for them, to see them, and for you to act to be able to truly understand them. So let me point you in that direction, since you're still listening, and you can decide what you want to do. And so what is that concept or principle that anchors you in joy and peace and sustainable, lasting progress? If just going for volume is not the way. The principle is the abundance and richness and immeasurable and incomprehensible value of one. These people say this one is great. This one is so important. And they mean it from their depths. To them, a lot less often about comparing this one to the other ones or calculating the measurable scale of what one it can be to the output of many. To them, one is everything. And that sounds like a really abstract concept in today's world. And they're not doing that in a stingy way where they're like counting, like, oh, I can't, my little pennies and all that kind of stuff. It's in a more generous and appreciative way. And that's an important distinction because they realize that many is made up of ones. I know that's not a new concept itself, but you live life one day at a time, one moment at a time, one word at a time, one breath at a time. That's unavoidable. That's just the way it actually works. But mentally, and through our ego and pride and all kinds of other messages and stuff that we get, we're told that we have to figure out a way to do more than one at a time. And that one is just a piece, an insignificant piece of the whole, and that it's negligible. And we're just doing this one so that we can get to the next one. And it's not about how much better the next thing can be for these people at the expense of the one that they have. One is not lesser than. It's a freaking miracle. Stay with me. One is infinite. Think about this for a minute. Everything we say is like, how can it be most efficient? One little input, how can it have the biggest output? One to many, right? But this principle that a lot of us live by and that this nation of the United States was founded on is e pluribus unum. And that's not about expansion, contrary to popular belief. That principle is about unity. Out of many, one. And what I'm getting at is to be free and one as an individual and as a group is the greatest thing of all. That's the only thing worth moving toward. That's like the number one value that you can have. It's not about scale. It's not about multiplying what you can get out of one thing. It's about multiplying what you can give to one thing and how you can enrich each interaction, each thought, each relationship, and not out of obligation or following the playbook or whatever, but out of belief that it matters and having gratitude that it exists and out of pure freedom of choice that you can. You don't have to skip over to many, and you can focus on one and give it all of the respect and love that it deserves. We think we're supposed to expand like that. We think that's all we're supposed to do. And maybe a better way of putting that is like the collector's curse, right? Smog the dragon down in his lair with all his treasures. There's a reason that the dragons, the things that are supposed to be the most vile, have like a hoard and a treasure that they're keeping to themselves. But there's this urge to like accumulate. But most things are not actually meant to be viewed through this mass manufacturing lens. That's not how everything is. Like we try to take one concept that works in a specific setting that serves one group more than anyone else or one purpose more than all the others, and then just say, well, why don't we just do that everywhere? You can't always use the same brush, but that's what we've been doing. It's about creating efficiency and how many more can we do and in as small of a period of time. And that sort of industrialist way of thinking has served humanity. I mean, it's given us a lot of convenience because of the quality of process and the repeatability and the engineering and the logistics and the convenience and demand. And that's what makes these things that are being mass produced have a printed or stated value to the market or the consumer or the user. And that's how they use it for trade. But not everything is a factory. Not everything is McDonald's. It's just a coherent and accepted practice, and I promise I'm not alone on this. There's people out here who've figured out a better way. And you just have to choose whether or not you want that, right? It's available to anybody. But yeah, that whole factory mindset that made the automobile possible and that revolutionized everything is not what everything needs to be. Not everything, like I said, is McDonald's. Because speaking of critical mass, this idea itself that volume and efficiency trumps the integrity and richness of the parts, and that people and attrition are just an accepted cost of doing business. For that idea to be the accepted, universally applicable way of life in all categories for civilization has now reached a critical mass. It's hit a threshold of acceptance and adoption in the minds and hearts of people so much that it's now reversing its purpose. It's a solution that created ease and convenience and abundance for the world, but that has reached a point now that it's become a parasite that chills its environment, and eventually it implodes on itself. I promise, like I said, this is not all doom and gloom, but I just want to be able to I kind of call out what I see. And again, I'm just one man, but one is a lot. And because when everyone is just trying to get as much as they can out of something or more than they need, when everyone's doing that, and when that's like the survival of the fittest thing, it always leads to collapse. It has evolution, but that's not our true way that things work. It's a broken worldview that just happens to have the loudest evidence and receipts. And so the reason that it's so loud is because people are anxious to maximize their take before what they can feel is a collapse that's coming. Like, get yours, protect yours, make sure you're not left empty-handed. Like, you ever feel like you're being moved through some process so someone can get to the next 50 behind you? Something that's supposed to be super important to you, like having a baby or going to the park or, or getting tickets for something and listening to music or that kind of thing. Yeah, that's not why we're here. We're not here to go and take a number. And maybe, some people listen and say, well, this is idealistic. Well, that's just what's required in that setting to even have a business that keeps running. And that may be true, but focusing on that itself is the problem. And that's not how you build something worth having. It's not something that you get to enjoy fully because it devalues the one. It's not something that deserves to last. Great and lasting and worthwhile things come about not by focusing on expansion and accumulation, but by focusing on enriching one thing at a time. And the big irony here is that those are usually things that become great, amazing, expanded things. This is a counter narrative to the idea and the teachings in business that, we have to design this for scale and growth and multiplying reach, and visibility is the key currency to everything. That's the true measure of what actually matters. And that we got to do this so that we can have leverage. So I know that that's a counter narrative, and I tend to have those. But please consider that I'm not doing this for fun or something, that I'm just doing a challenge for the sake of challenging the prevailing story that harmed me and that's given me wounds. I think it's given everybody wounds. But this is not a narrative that's born of bitterness, but of love. I hope you'll believe me that that's where this is coming from. It's not to settle the score, because that's part of the problem. I'm just anxious to share what I've noticed to change the world. And I don't believe it's a Herculean visible effort that does that. What I'm sharing here is rooted in the true nature of life and permanence. And I'm not saying this just through a religious lens, I'm saying this through what I've experienced. And that's narrow, right? But it's also, it has infinite significance, which is the great paradox of humans, of each human. This is how things actually work that keep working. Before we found a way to mess them up with our sophistry and ego and intellect and positioning and explanations and, power plays, is that 0 to 1 is a leap of courage. It's belief and faith. It's an infinite difference. I mentioned this before. The difference between 0 and 1 is infinite, and we're undervaluing that so much. It's not the idea that this could be the first of many that give the one its value. It's a representation that things are different than they would have been if that one never came to be. Stay with me. I'm getting into kind of the technical details here, but the difference between something and nothing is incomprehensible in mathematical terms. And if you don't believe me, you say like, well, is this guy a mathematician? Go watch the Netflix special, A Trip to Infinity. In there, they talk about how this part of math doesn't follow all the same rules. It might not even have a rule. Or that it's the basis. The Pythagoreans taught that one is the basis for all math. And in the Netflix special, The Trip to Infinity, there's some really profound things in there, undercurrents that struck me when I was watching it. One of the leading physicists or theorists, he was, contemplating infinity and talking about how it was making him feel so insignificant, like his scope and purpose and meaning in the cosmos. When you get to see the scale of infinity and realize that it's not a measurable thing, it's an observable thing, but not a measurable thing, right? It doesn't have an end. By nature, it doesn't. He felt insignificant. Like, what does it in my life even matter? And this might have been like the whole crux of the entire thing, was when he said, and I always used to think that, and then I fell in love. And then infinity made sense to me. Sit with that for a minute. All the numbers, all the sophistication, all the degrees and things that we've learned, and the complexities of everything don't stand up to the beauty of love, right? And what 0 to 1 is, it's a representation. It's a recognition of an intentional creation. It's not just an automation or a random collision that made one happen. Someone had to decide to choose to create that one. And just to dive a little bit deeper, and I hope by the end of this, if you're still with me, that you'll realize and be motivated by the fact that you are so incredibly significant, and everybody that you meet and interact with is so important to the whole picture at a level that they can't possibly pin down. That excites me. I hate being put in a box. I hate being reduced to a label or a category for the shortcuts that people want to take. And I know that's annoying sometimes, right? I'll take on temporary labels, but your permanent value is untouchable. The Stoics talked about an inner citadel that every person has. John Muir, who did the the trail in the Pacific Northwest and the Pacific Crest Trail, and a lot of our national parks can be attributed to the great outdoorsman, John Muir. He said, when we try to pick out anything by itself, we find it hitched to everything else in the universe. So one is something to celebrate and cherish and be grateful for. It's something to give and share with others. It's something to strive for together. And there's not nothing between 0 and 1. It's an infiniteness of meaning. The middle is made up of something that's unmeasurable. The middle is magnificent. 0 is nothing. The gap between 0 and 1 is beautiful. The 1 is incomprehensible. And we're always in the middle. We're always going from 0 to 1. I know that was the most abstract part of everything that I just said. So you hear all that, and traditional thinking might get you to say, okay, well, if you're going to challenge me, maybe you say, well, does 2 exist? I say yes, but it's not what you think it is. It's another 1. It's a parallel 1. It's not more than 1. It's the same part of the same infinite miracle. Hate is 0. Love is 1. Love is ones. We is made up of ones. Maybe you ask, well, is there such a thing as more? And I'd say yes. And you'd say, maybe what is more then, if there's only 1? Well, 1 is more than 0. but it's infinitely more. Is there anything more than one? No. There is one that is made up of ones. This is not just Nate just spewing stuff out of his head. Yeah, I cross-reference this with all the people that believe this way. And with how happy and different their life is, and any evidence I can get that this is the true nature of reality. So take that into your consideration. And again, we have this tendency to want to compare and say, like, was one group of ones more or less than another? Yes, it is in volume. But worrying about that is the trap we don't realize we're stuck in way too often. We just want to focus on what's more. Let's look at this versus this. And we forget to find joy in the one. The other stuff comes or goes based on your ability to do that. Because if we're always focused on what else there is outside of the one that's right in front of us, we're not here. Mentally, we're not here. And William Gurney Benham said, by losing present time, we lose all time. Why do you think you feel so unsettled? Because you're chasing a horizon that keeps getting further away. And this is the value of one person and one interaction and one life is absolutely incredible. Again, if you pay attention, you can find it in places that you might not even look. Maybe you're jamming out to Linkin Park and the song "Who Cares If One More Light Goes Out" comes on. Chester Bennington, the late lead singer from Linkin Park, he's saying, "Who cares if one more light goes out in a sky of 1,000,000 stars? Well, I do." And that just wasn't some tortured soul. That was somebody who deeply understood the value of one. And unfortunately lost for the wrong reasons, but he wasn't the first one to say that. They've been saying it all along in every single category you can think of, but it's not as loud as all the other stuff. That very famous poem by John Donne in 1952, "No man is an island, entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less, as well as if a promontory were. Any man's death diminishes me, because I am involved in mankind, and therefore never send to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee." So there you see that it's the whole matters. The one that is the whole really matters. The ones that make up the whole matter just as much. And the point of what I'm saying is not to dwell on pain and loss and how short the time we have is and how we can't waste our one life, but it's to celebrate the infinite value of one. It's not about one of the authors of a book I really like called Anti-Time Management. He says it's not how much time you have, it's how you spend it. I'm trying to get you to be able to see that no matter what's happening, that life itself is an incredible miracle. If you could just try to grasp it, the life is just so amazing and all of it is precious. And that it never ends once created. It may change states, but it doesn't end. That's not a call not to waste it, like I said, or worry about what you'll regret or what you might regret not doing, or like feeling like you're squandering it. Focusing on what you might be losing from moment to moment, or trying to be perfect and make the best choice all the time with each one thing is a trap of its own. Because that creates a constant state of stress and inadequacy. And then you are wasting the one. The reason you hear it so often, don't waste your one, like you only live once, like don't miss out on this one opportunity. That's really just marketers and motivational speakers regurgitating what they heard others say because they're trying to motivate you. But there's a better form of a motivation. And this is a call to see the one, to fully appreciate it, to be with it, to be one, and to ignore the math of men who understand the value of one, no matter how small it is, but who don't benefit if you figure that out. That's how a lot of this stuff is rigged. For example, every time you scroll mindlessly without intention, you've just given someone at least one breath. And if you didn't do that on purpose, which is usually the case, then that's a tragedy. And I'm guilty of it. I'm not immune, but you've given them one moment of attention. And the more you see that little tiny skimming off the top of your attention as something that's insignificant or negligible or not as a major trade-off to at least consider as important, the more you will make room for it without realizing it. And they know that. The more you will give truly significant things less room and less presence if you're undervaluing the moments that you're giving to things that aren't important. And I'm not saying never go on the internet. I'm not saying never scroll, go and live in the woods away from all people. That would defeat the purpose. Although if you can do that, if you can live in the woods and still have great relationships and community and meaning and contribution to society, then I think we should talk, because I'd love to learn how you did that. But what I am saying is just draw the line and don't cross it. Or if you do cross it less often. This is a big deal. Everything is made up of smaller things. We should not just celebrate a baby's first steps, but all the steps he makes the rest of his life. We should rejoice that he can step at all, because that means the miracle is still here and we get to witness it. Happy to be here. We're happy to be here. Happy for the opportunity and the ability to win well and the choice to win well versus just winning. Life is meant to be enjoyed and shared one moment, each moment at a time. It's not meant to be achieved or documented or approved by other people. And you know what one is often most neglected by really good people? The one that is you. And I'm saying this as somebody who is as guilty as anyone. Maybe I'm just saying this for myself. But if one person gets it and that person is me, then I'm glad I put this out there. If one more gets it, I'm glad I did this. Your worth is off the damn charts. You can't put somebody's value into a chart. But leverage, what's happening here is leverage is built by men with selfish agendas that are getting you to deny that. Whether they're doing it on purpose or based on a resume, or they're unaware of the impact that this way of interacting and influencing others has on artificially reducing you through your own mind, that's not the point. Whether they did it on purpose is not the point. The point is that we can shed that distorted lens and see ourselves and fellow beings as they are at that invincible core of infinite potential and not look at them as the shadow of their potential. And we do that one moment, one choice at a time. Don't get me wrong, goals matter. It's not always if this or that. There's and matters, right? Goals matter too, because aiming and direction and knowing where you're going and where you're pointed towards and how to stay on track for that matters just as much. But there are countless victories to be celebrated and enjoyed right now, constantly, not just hoped for or bragged about when you reach the goal. The enemy, which I don't believe is other humans, I believe it's our dual nature and malicious force in the universe that influences us. The enemy wants you to want or settle. Either one's fine. And neither of those is joy. Neither of those is gratitude. Both of those are looking through the lens of zero, that you don't have enough or that you're not good enough until, or that if you want more, there's something wrong with you. So be happy with what you got. But who does it benefit? Think about who does it benefit if you feel that way. It doesn't benefit you. It doesn't benefit your loved ones. It doesn't really benefit anyone for you to want or to settle. The top is meaningless and disappointing if you rush past the moments. The summit of a mountain, it doesn't exist without the integrity of the whole mountain and every little atom underneath it. There's so many examples of how this is a core principle. Jesus, what man of you having 100 sheep, if he loses one of them, doth not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after that which is lost until he find it? You're not a cost of doing business. Attrition is always a tragedy if the place or the state of being that you're leaving is good. Flocks are made up of ones. The 90 and 9 and the 1 are all ones. People mix this up because he does say at the end, I say unto you that likewise joy shall be in heaven over one sinner that repenteth more than over 90 and 9 just persons which need no repentance. But they're taking it out of context. It's not that the 99 don't matter. The 99 are ones. You think you are one of the 99 that makes no mistakes, that doesn't have need of repentance, that has not wandered? You're not. You are the one. We are all the one. You've not been forgotten or devalued. That is not something that can actually happen. Because no one on this earth, or no thing, embodied or disembodied, has the ability to erase you. All they can do is get you to believe that they have, or feel like you don't matter. And the one person who could potentially do that does the complete opposite. God. He focuses on you. He's with you whether you recognize him or not. He's not waiting behind the door. He's in front of the door. He's closer than the door. So how can you get back to this principle of valuing the one and becoming a practitioner of it in a world that says it's all about the volume and wants you to keep this cycle of dissatisfaction, that wants you to stop and give up or work your tail off to serve the purposes of men and not have joy yourself? Well, it starts with a choice. We say, I will focus and enjoy and appreciate and enrich each one, as if it's the first or the only one. Because technically speaking, it is. The past doesn't exist. The future isn't here yet. One moment, one breath, one look. Like, what if you put your soul into each thing? Not in a way that exhausts you, but in a way that lights you up. Because it connects you to the greater oneness of everything. It shatters the illusion that everything's fractured, or that the only way to be happy or to get ahead or to win is to ignore the one and just go for the most. What if you enrich one relationship at a time? What if you focused on one laugh and let it come from your freaking belly? And let it go to tears as you look up and see the faces of the people around you joining in. What if that one experience was not one experience because of the environment that created it, but because you were in it? That's what made it one of a kind. One kiss, one embrace, one idea, one inspiration at a time. What if you put everything you had into one prayer, as if it was the only phone call you got? What if that one attempt was celebrated because you went for it? That one rep that you did was so much more than you pretending like you were going to go do something. That one mistake you made, it was a blessing because it taught you a lesson. That one victory, no matter how small it seemed, was great. What if that one failure, that one lesson, that one connection that you had, you treated with a lot more attention and gratefulness and appreciation? You can't have ambition without appreciation. What if we said, I will not outsource my personalization or delegate my ones that matter? That one's a whole podcast by itself. I will not lose sight of one while gazing mesmerized at the many. People love to come to us with what's possible, what's happening, the newest trend, the biggest thing, like these results, and say, this could be you. Don't miss the bus. But underneath, there's people who know better, who don't stick their head in the sand and say, well, that big thing there doesn't matter. It's insignificant. It's not relevant to my one or my little thing, right? We're all part of the same whole. But they say, I will start with, not with why or how. I'll start with who. Who am I serving? That's a good one. That's a really good one. Before you go to why or how or any of that kind of stuff, say, who am I serving? And that should help you simplify or at least get started on putting more focus on the one or the one at a time. The Japanese samurai code emphasized that the strength of the clan was not its numbers, but the spirit of one warrior willing to do what is right no matter the cost. The one person with a total resolve outweighs 100 with half-hearted commitment. So if focusing on the one feels hard or unsustainable, or there's megaphones shouting in your face saying, stop playing small, that's not real, that's a pipe dream, remember that you don't have to be perfect, just resolved. Even if you lack consistency at first, which is sometimes my problem. Be persistent in your belief in the value of one. You don't have to win every battle or have a perfect record. You just have to keep beginning again in each moment, which contains an infinite ability to choose a step or action or a state of being that is closer to fullness or is closer to emptiness. That's our choice, and that's beautiful. But that's how you win well. Be here, fully, focus on one beautiful thing at a time, and go get them.